Hello, I'm Véronique Laos and I've been working as a project manager with APSA International Mauritius since 2007. One of our main activities here at APSA is to provide self-management training to patients with diabetes, cardiovascular risk, as well as provide training to the trainers to equip them to lead patients' education. The purpose of this video is to introduce to you the booklet Learning to Control Cardiovascular Risk, which will help you run educational sessions using this effective learning method. Today we understand the importance of patients being empowered to adopt healthy lifestyle behaviors in order to achieve good diabetes control and therefore avoid diabetes-related complications. This has led us to collaborate with Dr. Xavier Debuche, an endocrinologist, and Dr. Marivet Balpout-Debuche, a socioethnologist. Together they've developed the EPMC learning method, which is a learning method for the education of patients with chronic diseases. This learning method draws upon the expertise of both medical science as well as human and social science, and is essentially focused around knowledge building by the learners themselves. We've also worked closely with local healthcare professionals and the Ministry of Health in order to adapt this learning method to the specific context of their country. Over the last 10 years, we've been implementing this learning method in Mauritius, Burundi, and Botswana, and we've seen notable improvement in thousands of patients who have reduced their risk factors by improving their blood pressure, their waist circumference, their lipid profile, HbA1c, and even quit their smoking habits. It is not a prescriptive approach where the healthcare professional tells patients what to do or what is best for them. On the contrary, it empowers patients to make informed choices that will improve their lifestyle behaviors and thus reduce their risk factors. I'd like to introduce to you my colleague, Kamla Pandu. She will take you through an educational session so that you are better equipped to lead those sessions for your patient and help them take control of their health.
Hello everyone, my name is Kamla Pandu and I will be your trainer conducting an educational session using the booklet Learning to Control Cardiovascular Risk. Before we start our session, I would like to point out the necessary preparation you will need before running a proper training session. As the trainer, you need to choose a convenient location with a positive learning atmosphere and sufficient space. You must prepare yourself by getting acquainted with the trainer's manual before starting the session. It is important to have on hand the necessary stationaries such as pencils, erasers, and measuring tapes. You will also need to prepare a board like this to record the results of each participant during the session. Before each session, you must make sure to have the participants' results such as blood pressure, lipid profiles, HbA1c, or fasting glycemia. It is important to obtain those results because the learners will receive points for each result. You will invite 10 to 15 learners for a session and make sure they are comfortably seated around a table. During the session, you will give the learners enough time to manipulate, observe, speak, ask questions, react, compare, and find relationships between the different elements. For this reason, one session is expected to last about 2 hours. You need to be very cautious because as a trainer, you are not teaching a lesson on a topic, but you are helping the learners get acquainted with the variables that will affect their cardiovascular risks. Throughout the session, the learners will be able to build relationships with one another because, as you know, when someone has a chronic condition, he or she is often alone and they don't know how to cope, having no one to share their problems with. These sessions will allow them to interact with people who share the same problems as themselves. Let's start our session. I normally begin by saying, I will not call you patients, but I will call you learners because you are in a knowledge building situation. Using the booklet, Learning to Control Cardiovascular Risk, we are going to work on the different variables that affect the cardiovascular risk. To start, you will use this booklet to calculate your health totals. You will do this by working on the variables that affects your cardiovascular health. Or, in other words, you are going to work on the health of your arteries. So now, turn with me to page 2. What do you see here? We see all the variables that can affect the cardiovascular risks, namely blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, HbA1c or fasting blood sugar, waist circumference, and tobacco. Each variable has a different color, so that if the learner is unable to read, he or she will be able to follow this session. Points will be allocated to each variable. We are going to call one of the learners Mrs. Beatrice and use her as an example throughout this whole course. Let's say Mrs. Beatrice's blood pressure is 140. Here we are talking about the systolic. She will get 8 points instead of a 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, Mrs. Beatrice doesn't have her results for neither the LDL cholesterol nor the total cholesterol, so she will be allocated 5 points. This will encourage her to do her blood exams, and when she gets the result, if her LDL is normal, then she will get her full marks. Now, we are going to work on the HDL cholesterol or triglycerides. Once again, Mrs. Beatrice does not have her HDL cholesterol. She will be allocated 5 points. For the HbA1c, Mrs. Beatrice can use either the HbA1c results or fasting blood sugar. Since her HbA1c result is 6.2%, she will get 8 points. Now we come to the waist circumference. This is very interesting because most of the learners have never measured their waist circumference. This is a very interactive session. They won't get bored because they will be working, thinking, and during that particular session, measuring their waist circumference. They will also help each other measuring their waist circumference and write the results and the allocated points. So, let's say Mrs. Beatrice's waist circumference is 102 centimeters. She will get only 2 points. The last risk factor is tobacco. And as Mrs. Beatrice does not smoke, she receives her full 10 points. Now, Mrs. Beatrice will add all her points to calculate her health total. In this case, it's 38 points. I would like to bring to your attention that a 60 out of 60 results means that someone's arteries are in good health. The closer you are to the 60 marks, it means that your cardiovascular risks are less. And the further you are from the 60 points means that your risks are greater. At this point, make sure your learners have understood the point system clearly. We are now going to write on the board the different results and the different points of each learner present in the session. For example, Mr. James is also participating in this session. This is how we would record his results. After writing the results on the board, we can compare the different results. For example, we can see that both Mrs. Beatrice and Mr. James have a total of 38 points. What does that mean? Does it mean that they have the same risks? No. We note that they don't have the same problem because Mr. James got 3 points for his high blood pressure, whereas Mrs. Beatrice got 2 points for an increased waist circumference. At this point, it is important to give time to the learners to compare their results and discuss among themselves, ask questions or share comments. As a health professional, although it may be tempting, you must be very careful not to give a lecture on a specific topic. Your manual will direct you as to how much time you need to spend on each section of the booklet, when to stop and when to give time to the learners to work. Now we are going to turn to page 3. What do we see? Ask the learners to observe carefully. Take your time and say what you see. Firstly, we see the side cut of an artery. You will notice that fat has accumulated, and if we observe closely, we can see that the artery has ruptured and that there is bleeding. Notice there is another important information on this page. That's why you need to give them time to observe everything. We see that it takes several years for the fat to accumulate, but in a matter of minutes, the artery can rupture. Now we are going to ask Mrs. Beatrice to turn to page 4 and 5 and bring forward all her results to the top of these pages. She will write 8 in the pink box for blood pressure, 5 in the yellow box for LDL, 5 in the purple box for HDL, 8 in the orange box for HbA1c, 2 in the green box for waist circumference, and 10 in the brown box for tobacco. Page 4 is all about diet, and page 5 is about physical activity, medicine, and tobacco. She is allowed to choose one action from diet on page 4 and one action from page 5. Let's have a look at page 4. Mrs. Beatrice will take time to look at the pictures from 1 to 6. She will study them and make observations. Each picture represents a different action which will enable her to get points on specific variables and therefore help her to increase her total health. Please note that the maximum points for each variable is 10 points. Mrs. Beatrice is now going to study all the different actions and see the number of points she will obtain if she chooses any one of them. Action 1, avoid salty food. She can gain 3 points towards her blood pressure. However, if she chooses this action, she will only be able to use 2 points as she already has 8 points for her blood pressure. The total cannot go above 10 points. Action 2, eat raw, steamed vegetables, and a piece of fruit in every meal. Beatrice can obtain 2 points for her blood pressure, 1 point for LDL, 1 point for HDL, 1 point for waist circumference, resulting in a total of 5 points. Action 3, lower sugar intake and stop eating between meals. She will gain 1 point for LDL, 2 points for blood sugar level, and 2 points for her waist circumference, which makes a total of 5 points. Action 4, eat balanced meals. She will have 1 point for blood pressure, 1 point for LDL, 1 point for HDL, 1 point for blood sugar level, and 1 for waist circumference, which equals to 5 points. Action 5, limit fat intake. She will obtain 2 points for LDL, 1 point for HDL, 2 points for blood sugar level, and 2 points for waist circumference, a total of 7 points. Action 6, stop drinking alcohol beverages. 1 point for blood pressure, 1 point for HDL, 1 point for blood glucose level, and 1 point for waist circumference, which makes a total of 4 points. Action 7, walk 30 minutes a day. 2 points for blood pressure, 1 point for LDL, 2 points for HDL, 2 points for blood glucose, 1 point for waist circumference, and 2 points for tobacco that she will not be able to use since she already has the full marks for tobacco. Total points, 8. Action 8. Engage in physical activities 30 minutes 3 times a week. 1 point for blood pressure, 1 point for LDL, 1 point for HDL, 1 point for blood glucose level, 1 point for tobacco that she won't be able to use. Total 4 points. Action 9. Take medicine correctly. She will not consider this action since she is already taking her medicine regularly. Action 10. Quit tobacco. Again, she will not consider this action since she does not smoke. Finally, Mrs. Beatrice decides to choose action 4 and action 7, which will increase her health total by 13 points. She will then write at the bottom section of page 5, my health total will be increased by 13 points. My improved health total will be 51 points. Now we turn to page 6 and 7, where we are going to go into more details about each action we saw on page 4 and 5. Action 1. I avoid salty food. It does not mean only salt, but also prepared foods, cooked meat, cheese, tinned foods, sparkling water and sodas, salty biscuits and stock cubes. All these will be among the salty foods, and Mrs. Beatrice will discover now that when she prepares her meals, she must avoid these types of salty foods and add spices instead of salt in her food preparation. She will see in detail the benefits of this action. Action 2. I eat raw, steamed vegetables and a piece of fruit in every meal. This means that she will have to avoid deep fried foods, the salty sauces and jams, and replace them with fruits and vegetables. Action 3. I lower sugar intake and stop eating between meals. This implies that she needs to avoid being idle, as it will encourage her to snack between meals. So, she will have to make sure that she is eating enough carbohydrates in her meals to avoid being hungry. If she gets hungry, she can have a piece of fruit, skimmed milk, or plain yogurt. She also needs to drink plenty of water. Action 4. I eat balanced meals. She needs to eat her proteins once or twice a day, milk products 3 times a day, a minimum of 5 fruits and vegetables a day, and unlimited water. Action 5. I limit fat intake. She will have to avoid fatty foods such as peanuts, peanut butter, chips, and deep fried cakes. She needs to use a spoon in order to measure how much cooking oil she's using. Also, instead of frying foods, she can use a steamer or boil the foods. Continuing on page 7, Mrs. Beatrice will need to complete the questionnaire, I already have certain habits. By answering these questions, the learner will understand how his or her personal, familial, and environmental context affects their daily lifestyle habits. For instance, Mrs. Beatrice will choose, most of the time I shop at the market, someone cooks for me, and most of the time I eat with my family. Answering these questions will help her to be aware of her actual habits. In our next section, the action I have chosen will entail changing my daily lifestyle. She will be able to rate how much the action she has chosen will change her lifestyle. For example, according to the type of food she usually eats, it makes a big change because someone else cooks for her. She will circle 5. According to the quantity of certain foods, it will make a moderate change. She will circle 3 because she can reduce the portions of certain foods. According to the way I prepare my meals, since Mrs. Beatrice does not cook, it will take a big change. So she will circle 5 as she will need to educate her family members, for instance, how much cooking oil to use. According to the way I take my meals, she will circle 3 because it will also be a challenge to educate the rest of her family on healthy eating habits so that everyone is happy and enjoy their meal. According to the way I store food, she will circle 1 since it is not a big challenge because she buys fresh food for the day on a regular basis. The time I spend preparing meals, this will be a challenge because she will need to prepare her food before going to work to make sure that she has balanced meals. Here, she will circle 5. The way I shop. As she is the one doing her shopping at the market, she will circle 1. The budget I allocate for food, again, this is a challenge as she will have to be more careful in increasing her food budget and reducing on other items because she wants to buy more fruits and vegetables. She will circle 3. However, when answering this section, I measure the consequences of my choice and decide. Mrs. Beatrice realizes that her chosen action 4, I eat balanced meals, will bring a big change to her lifestyle, and for the time being, it will be very difficult for her to start implementing those changes. She then ticks the box, I realize I had better think about another course of action. She then chooses to replace action 4 by action 3, I lower sugar intake and stop eating between meals, which will be less of a constraint for her lifestyle and it is more sustainable in the long term. It is at that moment that the trainer needs to guide the learner to replace the action chosen with another one that is more sustainable. Action 6. I stop drinking alcohol beverages. She will limit her alcohol consumption, exercise more on a daily basis, drink an unlimited amount of water, tea or herbal tea without sugar, and get help from a health professional. Action 7. I walk 30 minutes a day. She can walk 30 minutes in several sessions. For example, choose to walk up the stairs instead of taking a lift or park her car as far as possible. Action 8. I engage in physical activities, 30 minutes, 3 times a week. She will do repair work or clean the house, gardening, and go cycling. Action 9. I take medicine correctly. She can prepare her medicine for each day of the week. At the end of the week, she can check that she has enough medicine for the following week. If she travels, she will always need to take her medication with her, using a pill box to help her keep everything in order. Action 10. I quit tobacco. If she was smoking, she would have needed to stop buying tobacco, find things to do to avoid being tempted to smoke, use nicotine substitutes, and get help from health professionals. On page 9, the section I already have certain habits and constraints, bearing in mind that Mrs. Beatrice has chosen action 7, I walk 30 minutes a day. She answers these questions according to her present lifestyle. She lives in the city. During the day, her main activity involves sitting down, and her main activity leaves her little spare time for her physical activities. The following section, the action I have chosen will entail changing my daily lifestyle, will rate how much change this action will bring in her lifestyle. For example, it will entail reorganizing my working time or social activities, circle 3, managing the time I devote to my family differently, circle 1, having a range of different leisure activities, circle 3, scheduling new expenses, circle 2, being outside my home more often, circle 2, avoiding places where temptation is strong, circle 1, seeking the support of a person or group, circle 3. Now, for the last section, I measure the consequences of my choice and I decide. She will decide to stick to the action she has initially chosen, Action 7, I walk 30 minutes a day. Mrs. Beatrice now turns to page 10, where she needs to fill out her name and surname, write the date, and bring her results and point forward from page 2. She writes her result and points for her blood pressure, LDL, HDL, HbA1c, waist circumference, tobacco, as well as her health total points. For the diet section, she will tick Action 3 in the column Choice and write 5 points in the column Number of points. In the physical activity section, she will tick Action 7 in the column Choice and write 8 points in the column Number of points. Her health total will increase by 13 points and her improved health total will be 51 points. On page 11, Mrs. Beatrice will write her results each time she attends an education session, and we will be able to see the improvement of her cardiovascular risk over a period of 5 years. I trust that this training has equipped you to run educational sessions for your patients to help them adopt healthy lifestyle behaviors, reduce their risk factors, and prevent diabetes-related complications. For more information, please visit our website apsainternational.org.